Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning Five here on Wednesday, June 20th, 2018. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, we're going to talk a lot about many different facets of Ohio State football and recruiting on today's show. Let's start off with breakout players for the Buckeyes this fall. Let's just say Dwayne Haskins doesn't count. We know he's going to, that's just so easy, breakout player. If he doesn't break out, then there's a big problem. But just let's start on the offensive side of the football. Other than Haskins, give me maybe 1, 2, 3 breakout players you're looking at this year.
Well, I'm going to go back to where I was last year and start with DeMario McCall, because I thought he would be the guy last year that J.K. Dobbins turned out to be. Now, there was some weird stuff going on where McCall, wasn't taking snaps as a tailback. And then they were like, he's injured. And I'm like, no, he's not. He's returning kicks. So something weird happened there, but it doesn't make Run DMC any less awesome than he was in the first place. I still think you're going to see some highlight reel kind of plays from him this year, even if there's not going to really be enough touches to go around to make him a true impact kind of guy. Another guy I think we all have to keep an eye on it. I feel like not everybody is talking about as much as they may end up being in August is Jeremy Ruckert. I feel like we're all like, oh, yeah, we got some good tight ends. Rashad Berry runs good routes. And, hey, Luke Farrell looks like he's really good. And Ruckert's going to come in here and be Mike Gesicki again. And then we're all going to go, oh, crap, we're actually using the tight end. Eventually that's going to happen, right? So I'm putting him on the short list here. Somebody once said, or I read somewhere that he was the best tight end prospect Urban said he's ever recruited. Well, he's had some good ones. So that's a good thing. And then number 3, if I'm going to go with anybody, you got to pick from that glut of wide receivers, right? At this point, I think it's Austin Mack is probably going to end up being the number 1 target. But with this whole rotational stuff, you don't really know if there's going to be anybody who actually emerges as a true breakout receiver because they're so insistent on getting all those guys on the field.
Yeah, and that's a nice little tease for later in the show. We're going to talk about the 6-man wide receiver rotation at the 3 spots. Before we get to that, let's look at the defensive side of the football. Just maybe a few guys you expect to be breakout players for the Silver Bullets this year.
Is it cheating to say Chase Young?
No.
I feel like he's the obvious answer, but he's also the clear number 1 answer. Everybody knows Nick Bosa is awesome. He's not a breakout, right? But Chase Young's going to have 10-plus sacks this year. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. There's not enough rotation for him not to. So I think he's a just clear cut. If you're picking anybody on the defense, he's the number 1, 2, and 3 choices. Now, if I have to guess somebody else, I honestly won't be surprised if Kendall Sheffield ends up having a fantastic season. He was the guy who I ragged on more than any player on defense last year because he was always that half step slow. But the reason he was that half step behind every play, it seemed like every pass was completed on him by the right past his fingertips, because I felt like he was thinking. Athletically, Kendall Sheffield is awesome. So if he's going to be able to react versus think, he could be a really good corner for the Buckeyes this year. So, if I'm going to look at 2 guys on defense, those are probably the top 2 I'd be thinking of right away.
I like it. As promised, let's talk about the 6-man rotation at wide receiver. I know they like to keep the guys fresh. They're saying they're out there blocking like crazy. They're running 9 routes. They're getting winded, so it's good to just roll guys in there that are fresh, especially when you have so many guys that are so equal in talent. We're not talking about guys, you got a couple of future first-round picks, and you got a bunch of scrubs. They feel like a lot of these guys are equal. There's a lot of debate on both sides of the fence backs, whether this is a good or a bad thing for the Buckeyes when you're talking about the 3 different wide receiver positions, the X, the Z, the H-back, and Zach Smith and Urban Meyer. They're, of the opinion that they want to rotate 6 guys into those 3 spots, and pretty much if you're in the top 6, you're going to get equal amount of playing time as the starter, or whether or not you're the backup technically or not. And if you're that 7th guy, you might be just out of luck completely. I think they've got to find a way to get C.J. Saunders in the mix. Maybe they got to extend that rotation to 7 this year. But just, Bax, your general thoughts on the wide receiver rotation. You a fan of it?
Well, we won a national title doing it, but I kind of feel like this egalitarian blind equality movement for the wide receivers is going to end up backfiring on them like it did last year with the whole, let's not pay attention to situational stuff for the running backs. Let's just plug a guy in when it's his turn, Tony Alford. And that resulted in Mike Weber not running the ball on 3rd and 1, and J.K. Dobbins not running the ball on the toss outside on 1st and 10. And I think there's a lot of situations where they look at the wide receivers and said, oh, well, it's so-and-so's turn to play, not, wow, Austin Mack is really having a good game today. We need to get him on the field more because he's having a strong game. Or, hey, nobody's stopping Ben Victor on the jump balls. Let's throw more of them. It's, all right, let's rotate it equally, and let's call a play for whoever the receiver happens to be in that spot, not which talent does this fit the best. I think that's a flaw. I mean, do you see it that way, Dave? Because I look at this and I wonder why they don't design more plays for certain players. And I think part of it's because of the rotation that they're so insistent on.
Well, you mentioned the national championship season, and I'll push back on that. I don't think they did it as much. I mean, yeah, they rotated guys in there, but it wasn't 6 guys getting equal amount of playing time like we're seeing now. I mean, Dontre Wilson went down. That was kind of a blessing in disguise. I hate to say that because Jalen Marshall, for all of his faults, was flat out way better than Dontre Wilson, the H-back spot. So then you basically, during the national title run, had Jalen Marshall taking pretty much all the snaps at H-back other than a true freshman Noah Brown getting like 5 snaps a game or something. And when he, other than a jet sweep against Alabama, it was mostly him blocking. And then you had Devin Smith, obviously, as the deep threat. You had Michael Thomas as like the main guy. You had Evan Spencer. They mixed in Corey Smith, but it wasn't, more than really 4 guys. And, I mean, I just feel like it's too many guys now, but I don't see a lot of separation of the one guy I think that could be like the alpha dog, the guy that could be emerge as the number 1 receiver is Austin Mack. And I think, Bax, that if you're going to be like a kick-ass football team, like just an excellent football team, you need to have 1 or 2 go-to wide receivers, and they need Austin Mack to step up and be that.
Well, if they're going to let him step up and be that, that's the big question I have is they're going to be like, well, now we need to run the screen to Paris, and then, hey, let's rotate everybody out, and, well, let's run a jump ball here, but, Ben Victor's on the sideline, so we're going to let the jump ball go to whoever the receiver is over there. Oh, good try, Johnny. I know you're better at the deep crossing patterns, but no, we tried it, Johnny. Good work. I really worry about that. Like, that is a legitimate concern. And now I have less of a concern about that, knowing that we're moving more towards a system where, it's Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson's show, and it's going to really be Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson's show. And I certainly hope that comes with some of the matchups that we would talk about here. Because you're telling me there's not a spot where you go, let's get the tall guys out there. It's the 10-yard line, and let's put it up to the back pylon and let them come down with it, right? So, there's some of that definitely needs to be considered. I also agree with you. I think if you look at the teams that have done well, there is the alpha who goes, I'm the number 1. Look at Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas was the number 1. But you know what else that team had that won the title? They had Devin Smith terrifying defenses. Alabama's defenses had exploded trying to consider covering him whenever you had a guy like Cardale, and by the way, a guy like Dwayne Haskins, who can hit that bomb over the top. So I think there needs to be real situational awareness if you're going to make this work. And, in the end, if you told me that, hey, 6 guys, 7 guys are going to play, but you're going to have 4 guys who are going to be 75% of those snaps, I'd feel way better about it, Because, hey, like I said, matchups matter in football. And what happens if Ben Victor in all situations is the 5th or 6th best guy, but he's easily your best guy for the jump ball? Then you put him in for the jump ball, And I feel like a guy like Austin Mack already showed some chemistry with Dwayne Haskins. You have to wonder if there's a certain point where Dwayne Haskins' comfort with some of these guys is going to come into play too. You don't have a veteran like J.T. Barrett anymore. And, with Cardale Jones, it wasn't a comfort thing because Cardale just said, screw it, I'm throwing the damn ball, right? But with Dwayne Haskins, as you ease him into the role, he's going to throw a lot. And if it means he's comfortable finding Austin Mack fairly frequently early on, then I don't go away from that necessarily. Because if you create a guy like Mack as the number 1 guy, defenses will start rolling coverage away from the others, and that opens up more opportunity. That's the chess game that's involved in this situation here. And I really hope that they start factoring in those matchups more than we saw last year with the skill positions. So we really didn't see it last year.
That was some good shit. Everybody should just rewind that and just play it again. But we're not done yet. We're going to talk a little bit about Friday Night Lights. Usually, Bax, it's the last Friday of July. This week, or this year, it's the second to last Friday of June. So very interesting timing that it's going to be this Friday, June 22nd at the Horseshoe. Explain to the listeners why there is a very good reason that Urban Meyer is holding this early this year.
Yeah, you're right. It's weird as hell. Friday Night Lights used to be the end of summer. It was the camp starts in a week. Woohoo! Here comes football season. And now we're like, hey, it's not even the 4th of July. The heck are we going to do during July now? I mean, we used to talk about FNL for all of July, and now it kind of felt like FNL got sprung on us. But I do think there's a very logical reason for it. That this is the first time that we're allowed to have recruits hosted on official visits in the summer. And remember back in the day, the last 10 years, you'd see kids do their like early summer trips, and you'd see kids committing in July, and see kids committing in June, and you'd start to see the kids who wanted it done by their senior year, right? They'd make all these unofficial visits. Well, now OSU's in a position to make an official visit, and a big part of the official visits people make are part of pageantry. Well, there's no real pageantry that comes with, summer visits unless you're in the Horseshoe for a nighttime camp that has 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people there watching and is a really big deal with some of the best athletes in the country there. So to me, I think Urban looked at this weekend and said, I have some 4- and 5-star kids that I'm going to be able to get on campus officially. Let's make a show for them so I can start locking these guys up. I think the entire point of FNL being moved up was to try to garner a number of major commitments at the end of June, early July, and create this big official visit weekend to A, make sure you get them all together, to pitch them on playing together, and B, make it an even more special visit than random weekend in June where nobody is on campus and there's no game to celebrate, right? And I think this is 100% to do with some very high-level targets OSU's chasing and less to do with anything else.
Bax is a high-level man himself, and we're going to have much more about Friday Night Lights on the Bucknuts Morning 5 tomorrow with Dan Rubin, myself on Friday, and obviously our site's going to be loaded with Friday Night Lights coverage throughout the week, and of course during the event itself and afterwards, so keep it locked to Bucknuts for all things Friday Night Lights. And thank you very much to the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. You can catch his column, of course, the award-winning Bucket every Sunday on Bucknuts. I am Dave Biddle. He is Matt Baxendell. Thank you very much for listening to the show. I hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag. Best band in the land.